If you had asked me at 12 what word I hated most, I wouldn't have said hunger, not cold, not even mother. I would have said home, because that word meant nothing good to me. Home was when you heard the neighbor's child crying and you just turned to the wall because screaming was part of the background. Home was when meals were on a schedule not because of discipline, but because there were only 3 spoonfuls for everyone. Home was when every corner was marked, not by comfort but by pain. That corner was where you were hid. That one where you hid from the older girls. And under that window, a boy once slept there, and by morning, he was gone. I lived in a shelter since I was 6. No one brought me there. One day, my mother just didn't come back. It was cold. I waited. Then a woman from the bakery came by, asked me my name, and that's how I ended up somewhere people didn't use names. Only, get up. Go. Here. My name was Ava. But I first heard it from one of the caretakers. Her name was Miss Carroll. She wasn't kind, not at all. But one day when I cut my finger on a broken mug, she cleaned the wound and said, "Ava, give me your hand." I was more scared of that than the cut, because it was the first time someone said my name like I existed. There was no coziness in the shelter, no smell of bread, no "where have you been?" no "take care." There was "don't make noise." Everyone washed? In line. Don't bother. And all I felt was a wall inside. Fear that if I started to feel anything, I'd disappear. Because pain was everywhere. So I learned to be stone, not cry, not ask, not hope. But inside, one thought kept living. Someday, I'll have a home. Not in the sense of a roof, but in the sense of a space where you can exist. Just exist. Without fear. Without only without if you deserve it. At 15, I ran away. I didn't steal anything, just left. No one looked for me. I slept at the station, worked at a greasy diner, cleaned stairwells, ate leftovers. And all that time, I didn't dream of wealth or fame. I just thought, if I ever get a piece of wall, warm light, and a kettle, I'll let someone in, someone who doesn't know where to go, and I'll say, "Stay, you can stay here." Now I'm 31. I build homes, real ones out of wood, out of stone, with warm lights, rugs by the door, with the smell of bacon, with windows where you can see the sky. For those who never knew that home isn't square footage, it's safety. It's when you're not afraid to hug a pillow and fall asleep. My name is Ava Blake. I grew up in silence, in emptiness, in walls that didn't embrace. Now I build walls that know how to hold warmth and hold people. But honestly, I still hate the word home because for me, it's not a word. It's a promise that I made to myself at 12 and now give to others. In the orphanage, there were 7 dormitories. Each had 12 beds, neat rows, black iron headboards, beds stretched taut in the morning until the fabric creaked, sheets gray as February, pillows like bricks in pillowcases. Each bed had a nightstand, but we didn't open them. There was nothing inside because we had nothing of our own. No diary, no hairpin, not even an old stuffed toy to hug at night. Everything was communal, which meant it belonged to no one. We didn't write our names on our cups. We were taught, "Remember your number." I was 87th. That was all anyone needed to know about you. The walls were beige, but not from paint. From the white paint long since faded. They were cold, not because of temperature, but because no one tried to make them warm. And when you fell asleep, you didn't hug your pillow. You curled into yourself, as if hiding everything that was left. Thoughts, fears, memories. Some had them. I didn't. I didn't remember my mother's face, only her hands. Long, nervous, constantly pointing. "There, go, don't bother." I remembered her scrubbing the floor, kneeling, and then one day she just didn't come back. No one explained why. Just a man in a gray jacket appeared, placed his hand on my shoulder, asked, "Name?" "Ava." "Surname?" "I don't know." "Well, then, you'll just be Ava." Just like that, in a minute, I ceased to be someone's daughter and became a part of the system. One December, benefactors came to visit, brought cupcakes and tangerines. I remember a woman with painted lips smiling said to me, You have such sad eyes, sunshine. Don't be sad, everything's ahead. And I thought, how can I not be sad if even the walls in this room aren't mine? They left, and we were left again, with crumbs from cupcakes and fragments of someone else's pity. And that was worse than silence, because at least in silence there was no lie. But one day something changed, not outside, in me. I was 11, sitting on the windowsill in an empty classroom. Miss Carroll approached, sat beside me, and asked, "Have you ever cried?" I shrugged. "I don't remember," I said. I never had time, and no one to cry for. She was silent, then took an old gray mug from her bag, placed it on the windowsill. "It's missing a handle. No one wants it. But it can still hold tea. Know why? Because it's whole, because value isn't in the exterior, but in the fact that it still holds warmth." That was the first comparison that struck me directly in the heart. I didn't become different that day, but for the first time I thought, maybe I'm not trash either, just without a handle, but still capable of something important. Now, when I build houses, I remember that feeling of cold walls that don't hold. That's why my walls always have internal insulation, not because of the climate, but because I know what it's like when no corner belongs to you. When our team opened the first home for girls from the system, I insisted that every door have names, that each could hang a drawing on the wall, or a photo, or even a note like, "Don't come in, I'm angry." Because if in childhood you weren't given the right to be yourself, the home you live in should remind you that now you can. Sometimes I enter such rooms at night. They are asleep teenagers, some with blankets up to their ears, some with a book in hand, some with a teddy bear, possibly as old as the pain inside. I quietly close the door and whisper, "May these walls be the first that never betray you." And if you ask me today what word I love most, I would answer, home. Not because I have one now, but because now someone else does. It didn't happen right away. I didn't just wake up one night with the thought, time to build houses. I just wiped the tears off a girl's face in the subway. She was maybe 13, sitting by the radiator, her coat too small, clearly not hers, hair tangled, fingernails chewed. She wasn't crying loudly. She cried the way people do when no one's asked them in a long time what's wrong. I bought her tea and a donut, sat beside her, in silence. She didn't look me in the eye, just quietly asked, "Do you have a place to live?" I nodded. She nodded too. "Cool." And that cool was so bitter, I realized, no, I can't just go on with life. I have to. I simply have to build something. Not a building, a possibility. My first project was an old workshop on the edge of town, abandoned, walls crumbling, ceiling leaking. But I looked at it and thought, if even one girl can wake up here and not be afraid, then it's already a home. I had no money, no education in construction, no team, just the memory of what it feels like to be nobody, and that was enough to start. I went to the local municipality. They listened with polite disinterest. "So you want to make a shelter?" Then what? "A home. Please clarify." "A place where no one is afraid of the night." They didn't understand. I raised the first funds by selling everything I had: an old car, a branded gift from a client, even the earrings left by my mother. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was relief, because no object can replace the feeling that you're doing something that matters. Then came the first miracle. I spoke at a small forum, 5 people in the room. I told them about the project, the idea, how I wanted every girl who's been through pain to one day lie down in a bed where the pillow is soft and the window is clean. There was a woman in the room, elderly, gray-haired, modest. Afterwards, she came up and said, I once lost my daughter. She was 9, illness. I couldn't breathe for years. But now I listened to you and I felt purpose again. I want to help. I have an old cottage. It's been sitting empty for 10 years. If you can make it a home, I'll be happy." And just like that, the first real home appeared. Not from bricks, but from memory, pain, and love. Now there are many. Each has a name, not an address. A name like a person. House of Vera. House of Clara. House of the one who was silent. And each name, a story. Inside, not just beds, but closets where you can keep something of your own, paintings on the walls, painted by the residents themselves, and books with an inscription on the inside cover. You're not alone. We've all been at the bottom. And now we're a roof for each other. A journalist once asked me, Ava, are you an architect? I smiled. Number, then who are you? I'm someone who remembers what it's like to not have a single window where someone is waiting for you behind it. And that's why I build. Not houses, I build waiting. I build you can stay. I build you're not a burden. Because bricks can be laid by blueprint, but hope only by memory. And I have that memory. Because once I too slept on the floor and dreamed of walls that could hug. Now I build them with my hands, my heart, my life. I had already built my second house when I hit the first wall I couldn't tear down with my hands. Not a concrete one, a paper one. In the form of reports, signatures, permits, proper contacts, and the right last names. When you build with your hands, you're in rhythm, in the flow, in warmth. But when you build on paper, you're cold. Because it's not about what you do, it's about who you are, and I was nobody. You don't have a construction license. You don't have an architect on staff. You haven't been audited. You haven't proven your efficiency. You lack leadership reputation. You don't have backers to support the initiative. I nodded, quietly, outwardly calm. Inside, a knot. One official, glancing at my folders, even smirked. Miss, you're doing a good thing, of course. Sincerity is touching, but you're alone. And the system, it's not a shelter. It's a beast. And honestly, he put his pen on the table and looked at me over his glasses. You're too small to change anything. I walked out and sat on the steps. It was cold. The wind tugged at my sleeves like it was nudging me. He's right. Let it go. Get a job at some organization. Follow the rules. Fit in. Live quietly. But inside, something struck like a match. Thin, barely visible, but impossibly stubborn. If I am small, that's all the more reason to do something, because those who are big have been pretending for too long that it's not their problem. I wrote a post. No whining, no pity. I just told the truth. How I build homes, how I get rejected from grants, how someone told me I'm too small. And I asked people directly, have you ever felt like you didn't have the right to change the world because you weren't enough? If so, don't stay silent. Tell us what you did anyway. Let's make ourselves visible. 2 days later, the post went viral. A woman from Alabama wrote about opening a laundromat with one machine. A guy from Canada shared how he serves soup to the homeless once a week. An elderly nurse admitted she secretly baked pies and left them in hospitals for those who hadn't eaten. Small people, small acts, which, when combined, become homes, real ones, warm ones. A week later, I got a call from a major foundation. We read your post. We want you to share your story at our conference. Me? Yes, I'm not a speaker. Even better, you're real. I took the stage in jeans, with no plan, no slides, no confidence. Just said, my name is Ava Blake. I grew up in a shelter. Now I build homes. And if you think you're too small, believe me, that's your strength. Because in the cracks too narrow for big systems, a hand can still reach in, just to hold. That night, I didn't win the grant. But people came up to me, and each one said, I also thought I was too insignificant to change anything. Now I think differently. When you build a house, you need walls. But when you build hope, you only need other hearts that beat too. And now I knew for sure I am not alone, and I am not small. I am simply the first, the one who wasn't afraid to begin. Sometimes it feels like everything changes in scale, grants, reports, square footage, statistics. But in truth, everything begins with a single key. Her name was Sky. She looked around 17. In reality, 19, but seemed younger because she always looked like she was waiting for a hit. Always, even when no one was yelling. She came on a tip from a volunteer. Quiet, doesn't talk to anyone, sleeps in doorways, doesn't even speak for food. Does she want to come here? Don't know. She doesn't seem to want anything. Sky stood at the gate of my first home, old backpack in hand, her face empty. No fear, no hope, no aggression, just a blankness that pity can't penetrate. I walked up and said, "Hi." She nodded. "You're Sky?" Silence. "I'm Ava." Another nod. "Want to come in? We've got cookies today, warm ones, real ones." She looked up, for the first time, and whispered, "You're not going to ask why I'm here?" I smiled. "No." "Why not?" "Because I've been there too, just in a different body, a different jacket. But inside, the same place." I showed her the room. Small, but with a real bed, a blanket, a lamp by the headboard. On the nightstand, a mug that said, "You can be yourself here." "This all mine?" She stood in the doorway, didn't step in, like if she took a step, it would all disappear. I walked over, pulled a key from my pocket, slid it off the ring, handed it to her. "This is for the house, yours." She took it, carefully, held it between two fingers, like she was afraid to leave prints. "What if I don't come back?" she asked. I looked her in the eyes. "You'll still have the key." In the first days, she didn't speak, sat in the yard, let the sun bake her face, ate in silence, slept in her clothes. We didn't rush her, we just stayed near. Then she started cleaning. Without being asked, with no purpose, she'd just mop the floor, or wash dishes, or fix the flowers. One day I came up behind her to say thank you, and she suddenly said, "I don't know what to call this, but when I scrub the sink, I'm not scared. Like, if everything's clean, no one will touch me." I sat beside her. "You don't have to name it. You can just do it and be." A month later, she brought me an old photo, crumpled, torn. It was her, little, with a brother. Behind them, an adult figure. "That's my dad. He's gone." "Your brother?" "Missing." "Mom?" "Never knew her. I, I'm not from an orphanage. I'm from a basement." I didn't ask for details. I just touched her hand and said, "Now you're from a home, from ours." The day she left, to her own rented apartment, her first job, she left me a note. "I don't know what it means to be happy, but now I know what it means to not be afraid of the night. You didn't save me. You just gave me a key, and I chose to stay." I held that note for a long time, then placed it in the drawer where I keep the most important things, not documents, proof that all this is not for nothing. Since then, I've handed out many keys, sometimes literal, sometimes metaphorical, but the first I always remember, cold, heavy, steel, and a hand trembling but accepting. And if you ask me how my foundation began, I wouldn't say with a dream. I'd say with one girl who never asked for help but got a door anyway and chose to open it. House number 4 was called Point, not after a street, not after a donor's name, but because I always said, sometimes a person doesn't need support. They just need a point to start from. It was an old farmhouse with a porch, peeling paint, creaky steps. It stood on the edge of town, on a hill where even the signal didn't come in right away. But I loved it at first sight. There will be light here. There will be warmth here. There will be a beginning. We raised money for the renovation through a fundraiser. Volunteers pitched in. One man delivered the windows at his own expense. One elderly woman brought a stack of old magazines. "Maybe you'll wallpaper the walls." I used to do that as a kid. Everyone got involved. The house began to come alive. In every corner, a trace of someone's kindness. We were in the final stage when the fire inspector came. Routine check. Just a formality. I was sure everything was fine. We followed instructions, had the documents, built wisely. But he walked silently through the second floor, came down, and said, "The house is subject to demolition. The load-bearing structure is compromised. Whoever reinforced it, it's still unsafe." "But we reinforced it. We have reports." "Did you redo the beams?" I nodded. "Then it's unauthorized work. No exceptions." I was left on the porch alone. The wind tore branches off the old maple. The house, the one we named Point, was now a comma. A sentence interrupted. I walked inside, stood in the hallway, ran my hand along the wall we painted together as a team. And for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not out of resentment, out of helplessness, because even when you do good, reality still knows how to break you, as if it's saying, you're not one of the winners, you're one of the triers, and that's not enough. The next day, I didn't go to the site. I stayed home, baked bread, tried to distract myself, but the thoughts wouldn't leave. What would I tell the girls who were supposed to move in 2 weeks from now? What would I tell those who donated money, effort, faith? And then I got a message in my inbox from a girl named Lena. She was 24. She'd come through house number 2. Now she worked as a florist. She wrote, I don't know why I felt the need to write, but something inside told me, Ava might need a letter of her own right now. When I lived at your place, I ate porridge for the first time that wasn't a condition. No, you earned it. You had a home where I fell asleep not expecting to be yelled at. And then one evening, you said, you're not broken, you just haven't felt safe in a long time. Since then, I've been building myself. Not fast, not confidently, but building. So, even if one house falls, the lives you've helped build are standing strong, because you didn't build from bricks, you built from belief. I read that and I understood. Even if one house doesn't make it, it's not a failure. Failure is stopping. Failure is saying, I don't believe anymore. And I still believed, with trembling hands, with fear, but truly. A week later, we tore down the house, but we did it ourselves. Every board, every nail, every tile. We dismantled it carefully, respectfully, with love, and loaded it into a truck. Why? A volunteer asked. Because even broken pieces are still material. For what? For the next house, the one that will stand even stronger, because this one will build not in spite of what happened, but because of it. Now, on that hill, there stands a new house, not as pretty, but reliable, with a wide porch and a bench that says, if something once fell apart, that means it's time to build it differently. But don't give up, because when you build a house, you're building a future. The fifth house was meant to be special. We named it Alexa's house in memory of a girl who died of hypothermia on the street in January, just 3 blocks away from a municipal center that only operated until 5 p.m. She was 16, quiet, withdrawn, but she had dreams. Small, careful ones. She wanted to be a baker. She loved the smell of vanilla. No one came to her funeral except me. When I saw her photo, I broke. I left for a week, shut myself in a small wooden cabin by a lake, and cried. For her, for myself, for everyone who lacked just one door, one key, one bed. Then I came back, told the team, we're building another one. In her name. There will be windows without bars. The kitchen light will be on 24/7, and a corner where you can just sit and not be afraid. We began construction in spring. We had a plot, small donations. Volunteers came to help. People brought tiles, fabric, furniture. One man donated an old bathtub. He said, my daughter's bathed in it. Let someone warm up in it now who was never warmed before. Everything was going well, until the inspection came. No one knew where it came from. But from the moment they arrived, cold, no greeting, clipboards, cameras. They measured, took notes, shook their heads. One inspector said, this is not a residential building. You don't have a certificate of occupancy. It doesn't meet code. This is a violation. I tried to stay calm. We're not a commercial organization. This is a charity project. People contributed. We don't make a profit. We're just, he interrupted. You're not just, you're a violation. A week later, the notice came. Cease construction, disconnect power, block access. Pending investigation. I sat on the floor in the future hallway. The walls still smelled like plaster. A lamp stood on the floor. In the corner, a mattress already with a blanket on it. And I stared at one spot, thinking, what if it all falls apart? What if they shut down the foundation? What if this was the limit? I called my friend Elias. He was a lawyer, worked in a human rights organization. He always spoke plainly. That's why I trusted him. Ava, he said after a pause. You need to understand. You're not walking a trail. You're climbing cliffs. The system doesn't support you. You have no backing. What you have is the truth. And truth, when it's unfiltered, is scary. They say it's just a structure because they don't see you're not building a house, you're building futures. I could have stopped. I could have agreed, signed the papers, waited 6 months. But I remembered a girl named Leah, quiet, hunched, with a backpack bigger than her. She once told me, "When I first entered your house, my heart clenched. I thought, this can't be for me." But a week later, I woke up and for the first time in my life didn't feel panic because I knew I could stay. I couldn't stop the construction because it wasn't walls at stake, it was belief. I started writing everywhere, forums, social media, editorial offices, foundations. I didn't complain. I explained what it means to not be a shelter, what it means to not offer just a bed, but a place to be alive. A month later, a reply came, one from a foundation I hadn't even written to. A young woman, deputy director, had been through something similar herself. "I saw your post. We have lawyers and donors. We'll help, not for the project." To prove that kindness isn't a violation, it's a right. We finished Alexa's house in autumn. The first to move in was a girl named Mina. She slept for 2 nights straight, 14 hours each, then came to the kitchen and said, "I thought that if I felt good, something bad would happen next, but here it's just quiet, and no one touches me. It's weird." "This is home," I said. "You don't have to pay for warmth with pain." Since then, I know one thing. When you build a house, you're not building a structure. You're building a shelter for stories. You're not giving walls. You're giving a chance, and no one has the right to take that away. For a long time, I thought I had to do everything myself. Not because I was proud, but because I was afraid to ask. When you grow up in a system where any "help me" risks being met with "your fault," you learn not to rely on anyone. At first, out of caution, then out of habit, and eventually you forget what it even means to lean on someone. You just stand, for a long time, holding your breath, alone. I got used to volunteers. They came, they helped. Someone laid tiles, someone cleaned windows, someone brought pastries, notebooks, bed sheets. I thanked them, hugged them, wrote thank you in posts. But deep down, I was still alone, not physically, in responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's on me. It went on like that until Corey showed up. He came to help with logistics, tall, with a tattoo on his arm, a set of numbers. Later I learned those were the coordinates of the place where he lived with his mom until he was 8, until they took her away and he ended up in foster care. He was calm, quietly sorted lists, called suppliers, kept records. Not once did he ask, "Where's the camera?" or "How will this look on social media?" He just worked. Once, twice, a week. "Why don't you ask why I'm doing this?" I asked him one day. He looked at me and said, "Because it doesn't matter. What matters is you're not alone." I didn't respond. I just froze. And then suddenly, I wanted to cry because that "you're not alone" wasn't said with big words. No pretense, just calm, steady, like someone quietly placed a hand on your shoulder. Then came Jada, a former caregiver. She once saw me speak and messaged, "You build houses. I want to build with you. I don't have money, but I have hands. And I know how to talk to girls when they have dark days." I invited her. She came and stayed. On the first day, she sat next to a new girl trembling on the porch. She didn't ask questions, just sat and said, "I was scared too, not of you, of myself. But here it's okay to be scared." And that makes it less scary. Then Mike showed up, a former street musician, slept in a train station, now works in a wood shop and teaches our girls how to make furniture. "These aren't just stools," he says. "This is when your hands remember they can create. And if you can create, you stop feeling like trash." And one day I realized I no longer have volunteers. I have a team, not those who help, those who build together. Bricks, food, trust, atmosphere, each in their own way. But with one goal: let this be a place where you live, not just survive. Now our foundation has 12 people, 7 of them have been through the same pain, the same darkness. They don't give lectures, they just enter a room, and they're already heard. Because they don't understand from books, they understand from memory. Sometimes I stand in the back and watch. How Sky teaches a new girl how to make tea. How Jada knits a blanket and listens. How Mike cracks a joke and a girl with a clenched mouth suddenly laughs. And I used to think I had to do it all alone. But really, all I had to do was start and not be afraid to let others follow. Now, when a new girl arrives, scared, quiet, with eyes that know only survival, I don't say, I'm here. I say, we're here. And that we is louder than any wall, because it's not afraid to fall. Because if you do fall, it won't be a system that lifts you. It'll be a person who once lay on that same floor. I never planned to go back at all. That shelter felt like it had been cut out of my life like a tumor and stitched shut, as if I had never been there, just a gray shadow with the number 87. But one day I got a letter, no stamp, no postmark, just slipped into the foundation's mailbox. On the envelope, neat handwriting, for Ava, from childhood. Inside, a note, one line. I worked there when you were little. You don't remember me, but I remember you. I'd like you to come. Signed, Carol. I gripped the paper, not out of fear, from an unexpected wave of something heavy, like a pit opened in my chest. Carol, Miss Carol, the one who once said my name, the only one who didn't yell, who once poured me tea without saying a word. And suddenly, she was calling, after all these years. I hesitated for a long time. The team said, You don't need this. Why dig it up? You've already built your own reality. But deep down, I knew, to move forward, you have to close the past, not by crossing it out, by being present. I said, I'm not going as a guest. I'm going as a donor. I want to offer help, but not in the form of a report, in the form of a door that no one opened while I lived there. The building had hardly changed, same walls, same yellow blinds, same gray steps. The paint was just more peeled, and me, grown now, suddenly saw the shelter that once seemed like the whole universe was actually small, tired, forgotten. I knocked. A woman with short hair and tired eyes opened. Who are you here for? I'm Ava Blake. Pause. Wait here. A minute later, she came out. Carol, older, thinner, but her eyes still held the same quiet, the kind that doesn't judge, the kind that simply sees. We looked at each other in silence. I remember you, she said, and I remember you for that cup and for the name. She pressed her lips together, came closer. I could never forgive myself for not doing more, for not taking your hand and saying, You deserve a home. You already said it, in how you looked at me. That saved a part of my heart. We sat in the old office, at the desk. On the wall, yellowed certificates, posters with slogans, a thermos with a chipped emblem. I told her who I am now, what I do, how I live. We want to build a branch right here in the city, small, unofficial, just a warm evening center, so kids can come, have tea, sleep, play. Just be, without fear. She listened, then quietly said, we still do everything by the list. Everything is strict, but the kids, they're not strict, they're soft, just shut down. And I so badly want them to have a key too, like you did. I took out a small box, opened it. Inside, a small wooden keychain in the shape of a house, burned into it. You can stay here, this is the first. If you say the word, we'll begin. I'm saying it, she said. Then we'll come, with beds, with blankets, with tea, and a door that no one has to be afraid to close behind them. Before I left, I stepped into the yard. A girl was sitting there, about 10, sneakers 2 sizes too big. She looked at me carefully, not scared, just curious for the first time. Who are you? She asked. I used to be you, I replied. And now? Now, I came so you don't have to feel like nobody anymore. She snorted. That's too dramatic, and smiled, genuinely. I smiled too. But honest, when I stepped outside the gates, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I didn't feel shame. I felt only one thing. I came back, not as an orphan, but as someone who lit the light where there was none and left the door open. Ava didn't run social media. She didn't make reels. She couldn't talk to a camera. Her voice trembled whenever she saw the little red recording light. She didn't go live or write posts according to a schedule, but her houses spoke for themselves. They grew across the country, across cities, in places where everything's long been broken. They were opened quietly, no ribbons, no flash mobs, but every house had a name and with it, a story. People didn't share links. They whispered, "You know that center where they let you stay? The one who started it. She was once a girl in a shelter, built it all herself. No loud words, just because she remembered what it was like to be afraid of the night." Then came the news piece, a short one, 5 minutes, a local station, a report from one of her houses. A girl said in the interview, "I used to think that if you grow up at the bottom, no one's waiting for you at the top. Then I came here, and for the first time in my life, I believed I didn't have to be broken." Someone clipped that line and posted it, and it spread, not by the millions, but soul by soul. A doctor sent it to a teacher, the teacher to a journalist, the journalist to a mother who had once grown up in a shelter herself. Within a week, Ava's phone wouldn't stop ringing. "We'd like to interview you. We'd like to film a documentary. We want to invite you to the Women of the Year Forum. We'd love to feature you on a magazine cover. We want you to become an ambassador for our program." Ava sat in her kitchen, surrounded by boxes of soap, clean blankets, and hand-sewn pillows, holding her phone like it was hot to the touch. "I'm not," she started to say to Corey. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not asking, you're doing. And if the world finally wants to listen, don't turn away. Say it, but in your way." She agreed to one interview, in a studio. No makeup, no stylist, no script. She only said, "I'll come, but only if I can talk. Not about myself, but about those who go unseen, the girls who are afraid, the boys who just want not to be turned away, the people who went through it all and stayed soft." The host was surprised at first, then nodded. The broadcast aired in the evening, a time usually reserved for talk shows and headlines. Ava spoke quietly. She stumbled at times, paused to swallow the lump in her throat, but every word landed. "I'm not a fighter. I just couldn't forget what it felt like to be unwanted. So I started building, not careers, not businesses, places where you can say, 'Stay, we won't push you out. If you see a hero in me, you're mistaken. The heroes are those who went through all of this and still didn't become cruel.'" The next day, her foundation's website received over 11,000 messages. Some were stories, some were offers to help. Others were simply, "Thank you, I watched, and for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed of my vulnerability." One day in a supermarket, a woman came up to her. "Excuse me, are you the one from the interview?" Ava nodded. "You know, I didn't know there could be kindness like that, or without slogans. And you look like someone who also knows what it's like to be scared." Ava smiled. "Yes," the woman dropped her gaze. "Thank you for not being ashamed of it." After that, Ava's face began to appear in articles, but not as an icon, as a symbol, not of a trend, but of silence, not of fame, but of that simple truth. If she could do it, maybe I can too. A candid photo, Ava holding a new house key and smiling at a girl on a porch, became the cover of a national magazine. And at the bottom, no slogan, just one line: "Home isn't a place. It's the feeling that you matter." And in that moment, Ava realized she never wanted to be known. But if her face helps even one person stop fearing their own reflection, then let it be. Let them look. Let them remember. Not her name, but her essence. A word that once tightened her throat had now become something warm, not because it was trendy, but because it no longer held memories. It held people. Her foundation was growing, the team stronger. New spaces opened, night kitchens in some places, quiet rooms in others, small reading nooks where people came just to sit near someone who wouldn't ask, "What's wrong?" but would simply pour a cup of tea. And yet something was still missing. A place you could come to not out of need, but because your heart led you there. Not because something was wrong, but because you just didn't want to be alone. That's when the idea came. The House of Open Evenings. What if we create a space where you don't have to explain why you came? Ava said. No forms, no applications, no programs, just a place where you can walk in, sit on a couch, hug a pillow, and not be afraid. The team went quiet. Do you think anyone needs that? I think everyone does. They just don't all know how to admit it. The first open evening took place in a small house with wide windows and warm lamps. At the entrance, no one asked for your name. They simply said, "Come in, would you like lemon or mint?" In one corner, a guitar leaned next to a blanket. A girl sat on the floor, drawing with chalk. An elderly woman read a book. A boy around 7 ate an apple. A young man in headphones stared out the window. And the silence wasn't heavy, it was kind. For the first time in a long time, it was the kind of silence where your shoulders could drop. Ava sat in the kitchen, watching people walk in, some with worry, some with curiosity, and each one stayed. A man in his 40s came up to her quietly and said, "I was going to drink tonight, but I ended up here by chance." And I realized I just wanted to sit in silence, where no one asks, "So, how are you doing?" Thank you for this. On the second evening, 3 former foster kids came. One of them, tattooed across his forearm, said, "Ava, you're not building houses. You're building a place where we stop being afraid of people." And that's scarier than the cold, scarier than loneliness. Being afraid of people means being afraid of life. But here, I can breathe. Within a year, open houses had spread to 5 more cities. There were no ads, no campaigns, but each house had the same sign at the door. You don't have to be strong here. You just get to be. One evening after everyone had gone home, Ava stayed behind. She sat in a chair by the window. In her hands, an old photograph, the one where she was 6 years old in the shelter, wearing a sweater 2 sizes too big, looking into the camera, not smiling, as if asking, "Will I ever have a place where I can just live?" And she whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, you will, and you'll build it yourself. Out of pain, out of rejections, out of silence, out of love, out of others just like you, broken, but unbroken." Now she knew home isn't walls, it's faces that don't want to change you, hands that don't grab, voices that don't shout. It's a gaze that sees you not as another case, but simply a person. And if you found even one such place in your life, then you're already home.